Here we have all the parts. This is the bottom cover for the heat exchanger. It has a drain, a drain port in it, so you can drain the fresh water from the heat exchanger. You have to do that if you're gonna replace the cooling fluid in the engine, or there's also one of these in the engine block, so it's identical, it's just in the engine block. We've got lids that I talked to you about in the previous video. Got the filler cap, soldered together in 3 pieces. One brass filler cap, a copper plate as a base, and a copper tubing for a hose barb. So these are soldered together. And that goes, of course, on top here. The hose barb faces the engine. You could turn it around if you want to have your expansion reservoir on the other side of the engine, of course. So you can also have it forward. It's a square, so you can do whatever you like. The heat exchanger tube has been cleaned really well. Showed you how I did it in an earlier video, so that looks really good. I also washed it because I had put some lubricant on it to prevent it from corroding. This is the end cap on the back side of the heat exchanger that guides the water into the exhaust elbow. So I guess that's all the main parts. This is the draining tap for the salt water part of the heat exchanger. If you leave the engine sitting in really low temperatures, the salt water or the raw water could freeze up. So in those kind of conditions, when you finished motoring, you leave the boat, it could be a good idea to drain the water out of this tube, so you don't have any bad experiences. So yeah, now we're gonna put it all back together. I've got all the gaskets new. I got some of the old bolts and studs, and mostly new bolts and studs. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the studs in here. It's time to get started, and the first thing was the studs. Here they are, one short end and one long threaded section. So the short one goes into the heat exchanger. I believe. Some of these were studs on this engine when I took it apart, and it seems like I need to clear out the threads a little bit. So I will use one of the old bolts that were there before. So I'm gonna clear out the threads. I'll put the camera in a time lapse for that. I can show you what I'm going to do first. Put some of this stuff on. It's just a heavy lubricant. And I want this stuff to sit in the threads because I don't want you to use Loctite. I think the manual says I should use Loctite, but I want to use something else. I want to use a lubricant. But this the lubricant goes quite stiff. So it kind of acts like a Loctite anyway. This one went in like a dream. So why didn't stud do the same? Threads match up. Seems like the same size. Yeah, now it's better. So, and to get them all in, all the way in, these seems to be ordinary bolts with no locking mechanism at all. I mean nuts, not bolts. If you have a nut like this and the hole here seems like it's oval, it usually has a punch mark on each side, and that's meant to secure the bolt or the nut so it grips onto the threads a bit more. So it's more like a self-locking nut. But these did not have that at all. So I'm putting one on backwards, and I'm putting one on the right way, like this. I'm gonna leave them a bit out. So what you need is, I like to use a socket on the outer nut, and I like to, you have to use an open-ended spanner on the other one. And what you do, you thread them towards each other, and then they collide. They put a lot of force on the threads. So now I can turn this just the way I want it to. So I can turn it all the way in. I give it a little bit of a snug up, not much. And I undo the nuts. And then the stud is mounted. So that's what I'm going to do 7 more times. That's not much fun to watch, so I'll put the camera on a time lapse. So then I've fitted all 8 studs. So the next thing is to mount the heat exchanger tube. I used this stuff to put on the threads of the studs before I mounted them, instead of using a Loctite. This is by no means a Loctite, but it is a lubrication, and it kind of gunks up and becomes really hard and stiff. So it gives us small amount of resistance for stuff to turn. So, but it will turn quite easily. So I'm relying on the friction when I put stuff together, and if I next year when I clean this tube again while it's in the boat, if I undo the nuts and the stud comes out with the nut, I would just mount it back together just the same way. So that's not really a problem. I can live with that. I just don't want to have, I want to have something on the threads so they don't rust and break like they did, because 2 of these studs broke off. But luckily I didn't have to drill them out. They came loose in the end. So it was quite easy, but I don't want to have to drill out one of these, especially not when it's fitted into the boat, because it's not enough space on the front side at least. So I want to make sure that if something happens, if one of these breaks, this is going to prevent it from seizing, so I can get it out. So I think that's a better option. So it's a calculated risk. I think it's going to hold, but don't do what I do. I'm just stupid. So that's up to you. On the surface, on the outside surface here, the flat surface, not the angled one, I'm going to use this stuff as well, because that separates the metals. And this is it's not conducting electricity in any way, so this is safe. It will not let the cast iron eat up the brass in any way. So, and it's going to be easier to get it off, and I have to clean it off the next time I open it and so on, but the surface will not rust, and that's the main point to make. So I'm going to smear on some of this stuff. On this surface I'll use this stuff instead. It's not meant for this at all, but it's what I have, and I want to have some lubrication on it to prevent it from rusting, and yeah, I hope the rubber can take it as well. So if it starts to leak, I'll let you know. So we are experimenting a bit, but I like to experiment, so that's nice. Yeah, so the first thing I guess is to mount the heat exchanger tube, and the end with 2 holes in it goes in the front. The bleeding hole for the air is pointing upwards, not down. I guess it wouldn't matter much, but I guess it's designed for being up. And this one in the other end, the big hole, needs to point downwards. So yeah, I'm just pushing it through. I could do it both ways, but here I got the lubrication and stuff, so it was more stuff on that side. So I think I will do, push it in, and I will apply some of this grease. It's assembly grease. This could get in the cooling system, in the freshwater cooling system. Could also, I don't think so. If it goes somewhere, it is likely just going to go into the raw water cooling system, but you never know. I guess it can go in both, but I don't care. I know it's not I'm really willing to take the risk. If I get oily stuff in my cooling fluid, I will expect it to be all the grease and oil I put on my gaskets, and not a broken cylinder head gasket. But of course, it's an old engine. I will keep an eye on the cylinder head gasket as well. So I'm just covering the surface slightly with a small or thin layer of this grease. I have not been told to use this by anyone. It's just my own stupid idea. Could be a horrible mistake. So don't do what I do. At least wait a year and see how it goes. So, and then this O-ring is going to be fitted, and I'd like to push this one out a little bit, and I will just put some tiny bit of grease on the surface that the O-ring is going to travel across. Just a little bit to make it enter a bit easier, but I don't think that is necessary in any way. It's just I like to do it. So and this is guaranteed to get oil in my cooling fluid. So like that. I'll just slide this one over just a little bit, and we'll rotate it so there is a hole in here which this peg locks into, so I guaranteed that this tube sits in the right position when it's mounted. So that's kind of a good idea. And there we go. That is the right position. Now I'll just push it back. Like so. Now there's a little bit of grease on the gasket because I smeared it over with my finger intentionally, and to get this silvery grease on this surface, I'll just paint it on here, I guess. So I just put a coat of it. This canister is almost empty. It's quite stiff already, so well, the temperature doesn't help either. It's really cold here, so this is something that you should not do. Other people will probably call me stupid, and I'm most likely to be right. So it's just experimental stuff. I like to experiment. I believe that if you can lubricate something so you're sure to get it apart again, it's usually a good idea, but I don't know about this one. So that's on there. When I tighten this up, this thing is forced really hard onto this mating surface, so it's all going to be covered really well. The next thing is this gasket. And these needs to be put in the right position. So you have to pay attention to where your small chamber is, because that's where this gasket is going to go. But you have to fit it to this one. And the water inlet is going to be at the bottom, at the lowest end. And then I have the small chamber down here, so that's where the gasket should sit. So I'll leave it like that. Maybe you could mount it in this slid as well. Probably could. Don't know. Perhaps that's even better. like so. Yeah, it seems like everything is in its place. So then we put the nuts on. And at this stage, I just don't want to push everything through when I start working on the other side. So I want to keep some momentum, so I don't push something out and the gaskets fall down or something. So I just put on the nuts. It's not really necessary to do it in a cross, but that's that's what I'm used to doing, so that's why I do it. So just a little bit of a tension on these. Like that. It's not secure yet, it's just kind of on there. And I cannot rotate the tube, so it sits in its little peg on the lid. So then it's the next one. And I will do that on a time lapse. So now we mounted both of these lids kind of loosely. So now we're going to tighten them up, and when I do that, a lot of this silvery lubrication stuff or grease that I put on is going to squish out from the area between the heat exchanger and the lid on both sides. So I have to clean that up afterwards, because that is going to happen, and that's something that I counted on would happen. So that's why I put it on the lid, because I knew that it would get enough of this silvery grease on the metal surface or the cast iron surface to prevent it from rusting. So yeah, so now I'm gonna tighten it up and we're gonna clean up the mess, and we're gonna continue with the next part. So just gonna use this tool, and I like to do these kind of things evenly, so it seems like it's going in straight and parallel, and I judge it by the gap. So the lower half was a bit further out, and now we're getting closer. Like that, and then I do the other side. now they're all tight, and the gray grease is squeezing out just as I expected it to. So here you can see the grease is squeezing out. So that's gonna have to be cleaned off. I don't have to clean it off, but I'd like to clean it off. And even more at the other end here. So, and I'm pretty sure that this stuff is not going to corrode. So then I'm going to wipe off the excess of this grease. And of course, when the engine gets hot, some of this grease might melt. It is a fairly heat resistant lubrication stuff, so I don't think it's going to be a problem, but you never know, it could be. And then I have to wipe off this stuff. Also, it could create a bit of smoke when I start the engine and it starts to get hot for the first time. So, but that's okay, as long as you are aware of it and prepared for it, should be good. You should not do this, it's just me, so I have to be prepared for it. So I'm just showing you what not to do. That was one side. And this grease is really messy, really is. So yes, I could have used something else. Guess you should use nothing at all. But since everything was so corroded when I took it apart, that's not something I want to experience again. So I do my best to avoid it. So hopefully this will work. I don't know, but I hope. Or if it doesn't, I can say I did my best. I tried. So. But if this engine had been taken care of a little bit better, corrosion wise, it's had good service, it's had its oil changes and looked after the engine as best they could. But because of the sink anode problem, they got some issues, and that's what has caused a lot of stuff. So when stuff starts to look bad and it corrodes everywhere else, you get corrosion in a different place, you don't mind anymore, you just give up. So I hope I can bring it back to life in a good way, so it looks good. But you never know. Hi, like that. Now it's this part over here, the fill port, or the bottleneck, or whatever which you call it. Goes on like that, and I also try to keep this one bare. I don't want it painted because the theme of my, or the way that I wanted my engine to look is everything that is steel that rusts is painted. Everything that is some sort of metal that doesn't really corrode but oxidizes and protects itself, I want to keep bare. So these are going to turn green, so is this, and it's going to give it a kind of a patina look, I guess. So it's just me, I like it. So that's just the way I wanted to do it. But here is the gasket for it. So if I can try to open this without damaging the gasket, that would be nice. I've ordered all of these parts from a company in Bergen, or in Sotra, I guess. Bilder I Motor, it's a local Yanmar dealer. They've given me really good service, so I can highly recommend shopping there if you are in the area. So I don't know if they're better than other Yanmar dealerships, but this is my first Yanmar engine and it's my first experience with them, but I'm really happy. Giving me good service. So I'm covering this gasket in the same stuff. All of these paper gaskets I always cover in some silvery grease. I always done that to my own stuff. I think that is good, because if I want to take them off later on, it's really easy. You can just take them off. So and put them back on. And very often they're reusable if you need to. So when I put them on new, I always lubricate them, because could be useful. This is a messy job. So, and also if you work on something that contains fuel, what I usually do, if I take off like reservoir on a carburetor or something, I always have WD-40 at hand, so I just spray that on the gaskets immediately after I take it off, because the fuel dries out the gaskets really badly. So even if it's rubber or whatever, I just do that. I don't know if it's something you should do, but I do it. So on some of my old tractors, I have to take apart the carburetor and drain it for water every spring, and then I always do that, and I've never changed the gaskets. So that's working out for me, at least. So now on my boat, the expansion reservoir is on this side of the engine. And I don't think I'm gonna move it. Could have. But it's kind of out of the way where it is. Yeah, I'll leave it where it is. So I will mount it with a hose bar pointing towards the engine. Like that. So now, one thing I haven't cleaned, these old bolts. So that was a bit of a mistake. What can you do? They are really rusty. I don't think I ordered them new. Pretty sure I didn't. Ah. Nope, I didn't. So, I guess I just brush off the worst. I will mount them. And if I get a chance later on, I will put some new one in. Just undo them one at a time. So, I think that should be good. My regular wire brush is in the boat. The boat's not here. So I guess I'll have to use the wire wheel. I don't dare to put it on the drill because I like to keep some skin on my fingers. So, rusty old bolts. Rusty old annoying bolts, I should say. Well. It's just the way it is. So that's good. And now we have to clean up some more of this silvery gunk. And there is just one major part left. So I'm gonna fit one thing first. Oh. This is this draining port for the salt water, and I guess this is NPT threads, so I guess I could just tighten it up, but it would probably be, yeah, you can see they are coned a little bit, so they're more narrow at the top than at the bottom. So as you turn them in, it gets wider and it squeezes tight. I think I'm gonna put some Loctite on this, just hydraulic, like sealing Loctite. So I will go and pick up some of that. I think I've left it in one of my boats, luckily the one that's here. But first I'm going to do something else. All of these nuts, I want to lubricate the threads that's in there. Just wanted the lid to sit and press the rubber gaskets for a bit, so it didn't put too much force on the lid when I was taking it off. So just put a little bit of this stuff on the threads. I turn the nuts back in and retighten them. And again, I just do this because I want stuff to come off easy. So I will continue to lubricate these nuts, and I will go and pick up the Loctite for the drains, both of them, and I will pick up the recording after that. So this is the stuff. It's not a Volvo product. It's like thread sealant for hydraulic connection, and the part number is 1116 1056. So that's what I'm going to use. So don't need much, it's just a little squirt, a little drop. That runs along the edge here. I turn it this way so I can follow the threads down a little bit. So now I'm just entering it. So I'm going to leave it like that. So then it's closed and open. It's a beautiful little thing. This one is supposed to be in this opening over here. So I'm going to fix that one later on. So that is actually the next part I'm going to put on. So I'm going to put this over on the side. Perhaps even upside down. Yeah, I guess it will stand there. As you can see, I need to clean up the surface of the painting, so I'm going to do that. And of course, the razor blades that I used for the cylinder head is in the boat, so for you guys who is into woodworking, I'm really sorry if this is painful to watch. It is also a little bit painful to do, but I'm being really careful. I really appreciate my woodworking tools, so using them for this kind of sucks. So found the same paper and I'm just scrubbing this surface a little bit. Took care of that on the heat exchanger the other day when I was cleaning up the rest of it. So I'm gonna call that good. And the first thing I do, of course, is to put on this silvery grease stuff. Again. Just like that. And the other good thing when you put this stuff on, it's like a glue to put on the gasket. If you turn this upside down, it wouldn't fall off. So that's quite good. So if you're working upside down, it's quite a good thing. And then the next thing, which way to mount this one? I believe it is this way. Yeah. I remember because it was really rusty in this area where this tab is located, and this is where the exhaust elbow was. So it's this way. I could check it in the manual, but I am pretty sure. I always mount the bolts kind of halfway in, well, almost all the way in. So I can make sure that I can move stuff about if it doesn't fit perfectly. So if I tighten one down or two or three down and it's a bit off, when I get to the one furthest out, it's not going to fit all of a sudden, and that's annoying. Again. So that's all in. These bolts has a 12mm head on them. Yeah, of course. Should lubricate them, obviously. This is the heat exchanger, all put back together. Quite happy with how everything looks. So yeah, it's nice. I did film when I attached the heat or the exhaust elbow, but somehow I have managed to delete the footage. So I'm really sorry about that, but you can see it's mounted. I haven't wiped off this gunk. It is an exhaust gasket than the original one, and I smeared this silvery grease that I've used a lot on on both sides of the gasket, and also I put some on the threads of the bolts. I was really careful while I was filming this because I wanted to show you that the hole where I drilled out the bolt that actually held up nicely, but unfortunately the footage has been deleted somehow. I can't find it anyway. So yeah, and here is the underside with the bottom lid. This is the mounting point for the diesel filter. What these two bolts are. These two bolts hold a throttle cable, so that's on a bracket. I've got that one lying around, so when I put it back together I'm gonna make our own video of adjusting the gear cables and throttle cables. So yeah, so now it's getting close to mounting this thing back on the engine. So chose to go with blue lettering and a blue lid because it was kind of rusty, and yeah, this is what it looks like. I think the end caps came out nicely in brass, so yeah, we'll see how that holds up, and I guess they will be green quite soon, but green is also a color, so yeah. So yeah, thank you for watching this series with a heat exchanger. It's been a long project. It was in a rather sorry state, so now all the corrosion is gone, and it's gonna hold up for many years.